Welcome back, everyone. I am incredibly thrilled to have you here for another explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating deep dive into the neurological impacts of alcohol. We're going to look closely at what the absolute latest imaging and molecular research reveals about your brain's response to drinking. So, before you grab that weekend pint or pour a glass of wine to unwind, let's look at the science, because I promise you, what the data uncovers is absolutely captivating. We're talking about measurable physical shrinkage and actual metabolic power outages happening right inside your head.
Real quick, before we get into the hard science, I want you to think about your typical weekly routine. How many alcoholic drinks do you usually consume? Be totally honest with yourself here. I want you to just hold that number in the back of your mind as we go through this, because having your own habits as a baseline is going to make the data we look at today feel deeply personal and highly immediate. Okay, let's dive into this. We need to establish our core framework first. To really grasp the science, we have to look at alcohol as this intense double-edged sword that affects both the brain's hardware and its software. On one side, we have structural changes, actual physical shrinkage of the brain, which is remarkably linked to long-term moderate drinking. Then, on the flip side, we have functional changes. These operate a lot more like metabolic power outages, and they're triggered by acute, heavy binge drinking. To systematically uncover the science behind both of these phenomena, here is our clear roadmap for today. First up, your brain on alcohol. Second, moderate drinking causes shrinkage. Third, binge drinking power outage. Fourth, the mechanism of memory loss. And finally, can we fix it? Let's move right in to section 1, your brain on alcohol, and specifically the vulnerable zones. Our very first step is to pinpoint exactly where alcohol inflicts its damage, because as it turns out, not all brain tissue reacts to alcohol the exact same way. Decades of structural and functional imaging show us that alcohol heavily targets specific, highly vulnerable zones: the frontal lobes, the limbic system, the cerebellum, and the hippocampus. What's absolutely wild here is that these aren't just random brain regions. These are the critical, high-level control centers for your memory formation, spatial coordination, and emotional processing. When you introduce alcohol into the mix, these are the exact systems that take the immediate hit. Which brings us to section 2, moderate drinking causes shrinkage and the long-term physical toll it takes. You know, we always hear about the dangers of heavy, chronic alcoholism, right? But there is a totally fascinating study published in Scientific Reports that specifically focused on an early middle-aged cohort, adults aged 39 to 45, to completely debunk the myth that moderate drinking is totally harmless. So the crucial point is this number, 0.2%. The researchers measured alcohol consumption using the standard audit C-scale, and they found that total brain volume physically decreases by roughly 0.2% for every single unit increase in alcohol consumption. Put simply, even at low to moderate drinking levels, your brain's physical volume, your actual neurological hardware, is actively shrinking. And if you're thinking, oh, this probably only applies to heavy drinkers or specific demographics, the data tells a totally different story. Brain shrinkage from moderate drinking is universal. It was observed to affect male and female brains equally, and it starts as early as age 39. Furthermore, this structural volume loss is a biological reaction observed entirely independent of other factors, like whether or not the person is a smoker. It's just a straight across-the-board physical toll. Let's pivot to section 3, binge drinking, power outage, and the functional crash. Having looked at the structural shrinkage from moderate use, we're now turning to a major review from Frontiers in Neuroscience to explore how heavy, acute binge drinking causes a massive functional crisis in the brain. The central concept we need to understand here is hypometabolism. To strip away the medical jargon for a second, just think of hypometabolism like a rolling blackout across a massive city's power grid. When a person binge drinks, PET scans reveal a massive, significant reduction in glucose metabolism. The brain essentially loses its energy supply, causing neuronal activity to just crash, specifically and profoundly in the temporal lobe and memory centers. The lights inside the brain literally dim. And this metabolic blackout has incredibly immediate cognitive consequences. While a sober brain state allows for normal exploration and really sharp spatial cognition, a binge-intoxicated brain experiencing hypometabolism suffers from impaired object place memory. Because the energy grid is quite literally down, the brain struggles to map, process, and remember locations. Suddenly losing your keys or forgetting your way around makes a whole lot of physiological sense, right? Moving on to section 4, the mechanism of memory loss, or the molecular saboteur. We know the power goes out and memory fails, but to uncover exactly why this happens, we have to look at the micro-level biological mechanism. Meet ECRP. This stands for extracellular cold-inducible RNA binding protein. It's a bit of a mouthful, but ECRP is a really crucial inflammatory stress protein. When the brain experiences the severe cellular stress of excessive alcohol exposure, it chemically signals damage by releasing this exact protein. It essentially acts as a molecular saboteur, kicking off an intense inflammatory response right inside your neural networks. And this brilliantly illustrates the step-by-step cascade of how that memory loss actually happens. Step 1. Binge alcohol exposure occurs. Step 2. Immune cells in the brain, which are known as microglia, release that ECIRP stress protein. Step 3. This ECIRP saboteur binds directly to TLR4 receptors on your neurons. And finally, step 4. Because of this binding, synaptic plasticity drastically drops. The formation of new memories is functionally blocked right at the synaptic level, which perfectly explains why you might not remember how you got home, but your immune cells, oh, they definitely remember the damage. That brings us to our final section, Section 5, Can We Fix It? And the future of treatment. Knowing the sheer scale of the structural shrinkage and those crazy molecular power outages, the ultimate question is whether modern medicine can reverse or prevent this cognitive decline. Currently, the options are surprisingly limited. FDA-approved treatments for alcohol use disorder focus almost entirely on deterrence, not on memory repair. Medications like disulfiram will cause severe nausea if you drink, naltrexone reduces the chemical reward of the alcohol, and acamprosate helps reduce cravings. Now, while these are incredibly important tools to help patients maintain abstinence, none of them actually repair that metabolic power outage or fix the cognitive impairments we've just been talking about. However, there is incredible, super exciting potential on the horizon in preclinical studies. Researchers have identified the C23 peptide. It's an experimental therapeutic inhibitor that binds with high affinity to block the ECIRP stress protein. By neutralizing that molecular saboteur and stopping the inflammatory response right in its tracks, the C23 peptide offers potential protection for the brain's plasticity and memory centers even under severe stress conditions. It is a brilliant, brilliant step forward in neuroprotection. So let's bring it all together. We've explored the massive metabolic blackouts caused by binge drinking, and we've seen the precise molecular cascades that literally wipe out memory. But perhaps most strikingly, we looked at the hard data showing that even moderate drinking physically shrinks the brain, starting as early as middle age. So I want to leave you with this lingering, somewhat provocative thought. Based on all the science we just unpacked, is the truly safe amount of alcohol actually zero? Keep that in mind as you reflect on your own habits. Thank you so much for exploring this deeply fascinating explainer with me today, and as always, keep learning.